Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's helpful to take a step back and ask, why are we here? We're here because I have wildfires raging early and hard in New Mexico, and I thought it was hot because we've been in triple digits for a few weeks. But NASA satellites confirmed on June 20th that surface temperatures in Siberia, north of the Arctic Circle, were 118 degrees. Our forests cannot maintain themselves if we keep baking the planet like this. I want to thank you for the investments in this legislation in transmission, in hydrogen, in weatherization, in orphan wells, and in mine cleanup. I would suggest we need for the mine cleanup money to apply to hard rock as well. And I think we need to look hard at a clean energy standard to meet the scale of time that is necessary in this transition. I want to talk for a second about hard rock. We all acknowledge the need for critical minerals in these new technologies, but I will say our hard rock mining legislation framework was written in 1872, and we will produce a lot more critical minerals if we actually have safeguards for local water supplies, if we have robust public involvement, and if we clean up the hundreds of thousands of abandoned hard rock mines that litter the West. I first met former Governor John Hickenlooper on the phone because the Animas River and the San Juan River were running yellow because we didn't clean up that mess. And it makes it hard to get communities to embrace a mine if you haven't reformed that fundamental law. So 1872 Mining Act reform should be a prerequisite to give communities the confidence to actually mine these materials. Mr. O'Mara, I wish I could talk as fast as you. You indicated the need for an additional $6.5 billion for forest restoration, hazardous fuels management on BLM lands, another $6 billion for rangeland management, water resources, resilience, and research on BLM and tribal lands. Talk to us about the necessity of these efforts in order to break the current fire cycle, which is releasing carbon, and talk a little bit about the relationship to a potential 21st century CCC program that can help us scale up fast enough to actually turn this around.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Heinrich. And even on your previous comment, those abandoned mines could be a very rich source of the minerals that we need. So, I mean, the work that Senator Heinrich and yourself and Senator Murkowski have been doing, it's incredibly important to harvest what's still already in those mines. Look, I mean, just very honestly, right, we for decades have not invested in our Bureau of Land Management lands. And that the decades of disinvestment have led to invasive species on the vegetation side just running wild. I mean, we have 100 million acres right now of cheatgrass that's basically just tinder. And so we have a wet spring, got all the vegetation growing. We have a dry summer, huge heats. All of that becomes tinder. And whether it's the Great Basin or other places, it's not just public lands; it's private lands too. And there's some work we have to do on private grasslands. But the grasslands and shrublands are the rate of fire growth is some of the fastest in the country. And so we talk about fire as a forest problem, but we have to talk about shrublands and grasslands, and that's why having both investments on the wildfire side is important, but also making sure we're investing in the restoration, because it's also one of the best ways to prevent drought by having better storage naturally in the system, more storage in the headwaters, as a way to restore these systems and help downstream states like New Mexico.
And I would add that cheatgrass is not exactly forage for anything, right? It's not for livestock, it's not for wildlife. Dr. Hogan, if we were to simply, we talk a lot about innovation on this committee, but I like to talk about implementation on this committee. And if we were to simply electrify everything that we can today, all of the things that we could swap out in our homes and businesses where we have superior technology today, replacing gas furnaces, stoves, water heaters with electric heat pumps, with induction stoves, with air source heat pump water heaters. What kind of an emissions impact would we see if we did that throughout our economy?
I mean, certainly there's a number of great electric technologies out there, and we see them being adopted in different parts of the country at different rates. As we clean the grid, where you can get to with electrification and a cleaner grid from a CO2 standpoint, you can get to a close to zero carbon world from the energy that you use in the built infrastructure.